Friday morning. These temperatures are higher than the average maxima at this time of year. So a very mild start to Friday. Similar kind of day with rain in the northwest, heavy persistent rain, quite gusty as well, although the winds will ease a touch during Friday compared to Thursday. Some rain at times for Northern Ireland. For England and Wales, well, a little bit of rain and drizzle, mostly over hills in the west. Some brightness in the east. But look at these temperatures, 15, 16, 17 degrees, exceptionally mild, particularly in Scotland.
We are GB News.
And we'd like to say thank you
to each and every one of you
for helping our great nation
find its voice.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Across England, Scotland,
Wales and Northern Ireland. On TV,
on radio and online.
We're proud to be
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. You've been cancelled. Join the club. Oh my goodness, brilliant. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
On the Mark Steyn Show, we cover the stories a lot of people are scared even to mention. The stuff that really matters with some of the world's biggest thinkers.
Now is his opportunity to kind of take the steering wheel of history.
Break away from the flop at 8 o'clock on GB News with the Mark Steyn Show.
Hello, I'm Esther McVeigh.
And I'm Philip Davis.
Whether you're watching or listening on TV, online or on radio, we handpick the latest stories, debates and expert opinions for your weekend. So whether that's politics, news or showbiz, we've got it covered.
Join us every Saturday morning at 10 o'clock on GB News.
Hello, I'm Alastair Stewart. And I'd invite you to join me at noon on Saturdays and Sundays for Alastair Stewart and Friends. I've been in this business for over 40 years. Now, here at GB News, I've never been happier. I get to choose the big stories that really interest me. We hear what you have to say, and you hear what I have to say. I really hope you can join me, noon on Saturdays and Sundays.
I'm Mark Dolan. Join me at 11 on GB News for Headliners, in which I'll be joined by two of the UK's top comedians discussing tomorrow's papers. If it's an important story, we'll cover it, but we'll have some fun along the way. Headliners, the late-night paper review that won't send you to sleep like the others will. 7 nights a week at 11 p.m. on GB News.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
Hey, welcome along to the Mark Steyn Show. I don't have anything to add to Nigel's coverage of the US elections, except this headline. Pennsylvania state representative re-elected despite being dead. We are proud to see the voters to continue to show their confidence in him and his commitment to democratic values by re-electing him posthumously, Pennsylvania House Democrats said. You know what this means? Joe Biden's a shoo-in for 2024. He's already been elected posthumously, so re-electing him posthumously shouldn't be any challenge for the Democrats. By the way, if we can have dead guys in the British system, I would like to bring back I think it's the third Marquess of Salisbury, a brilliant Prime Minister. I would like him to be next in line for the Tory leadership. As we have remarked earlier in the week, when our ruling class talks about something incessantly, like the big climate Beano, COP27, it's because there are all kinds of other things they would rather not be talking about, such as, for example, the scale of the so-called invasion. That's Suella's word, remember, and she's been much criticised for it. The scale of the invasion. We have some remarkable footage from a rather fancy Heathrow hotel where thousands of strapping young men are being put up at your expense. This useless government sits idly by as it surrenders the nation hotel by hotel. Plus, who exactly benefits from our climate change obsession? And after 6 months of excess deaths, week on week on week, why is even our dopey, brain-dead media, never mind the government, not in the least bit interested in finding out what's causing all these extra corpses? Kelvin McKenzie, Patrick O'Flynn, Alexandra Marshall, Jamie Jenkins are all on deck, as we hope you are, because you're the most important part of the show. You can email me, you can ask me anything you like, gbviews@gbnews.uk. You can tweet me at GBNews. A full hour of news and analysis coming your way after Polly Middlehurst with the latest headlines.
Mark, thank you. Good evening. The top stories tonight on GB News. The Royal College of Nursing has announced the first national strike in its 106-year history. The RCN says it's going to affect the majority of NHS employers in the UK as nurses walk out over pay and patient safety concerns. The union's 300,000 members were urged to vote in favour of industrial action. However, emergency care, we're told, will not be affected. Pat Cullen is the union's General Secretary. She says it's time for governments to listen.
Hundreds of thousands of nurses have spoken out today loud and clear. And what they're saying to every government right across the UK is enough is enough. And today what they've done is turned that anger that they've had about how they've been treated into action. And I'm so very proud of them for speaking up and speaking out on behalf of their patients.
But the Health Secretary, Steve Barclay, says nurses' pay demands are out of step with the UK's economic circumstances. Well, the Prime Minister insists he didn't know about specific concerns over Sir Gavin Williamson when he appointed him to the Cabinet. The MP left his post last night, saying allegations of bullying were becoming a distraction to the good work of government. He denies any wrongdoing. During Prime Minister's questions, the Labour leader Sir Keir Starmer criticised Sir Gavin and questioned Rishi Sunak's judgment. The Prime Minister said it was absolutely right that Sir Gavin had resigned. Meanwhile, the Home Secretary is urging police chiefs to focus on what she's calling common sense policing and not politically correct distractions. Speaking at a conference in Westminster today, Suella Braverman said the public expects the police to be tackling crime and not debating topics such as gender on Twitter. She also urged the force to reconsider police action that could be seen as woke behaviour.
I've asked my officials to revisit the issue of non-crime hate incidents as a first step, as I want to be sure that we are allowing you to prioritise your time and your energy to deal with the threats to people and their property.
And lastly, a 23-year-old man has been arrested after throwing eggs at King Charles and Camilla, Queen Consort, in York. The incident happened as they arrived at York Minster to unveil a statue of the late Queen. It's understood a protester threw 3 eggs at them, all of which narrowly missed the royal couple. Several police officers at Micklegate Bar were seen restraining a suspect on the ground immediately after the incident. You're up to date on TV, online and DAB+ radio. You're with GB News, where now it's time for Mark Steyn.
The numbers are good.
This, the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland and its territories and possessions around the globe, is a great nation. It is the nation that more than any other can plausibly claim to be the one that built the modern world. And it is committing national suicide under a so-called conservative government that has failed to conserve anything. Our leaders are currently primping and preening themselves at the COP27 climate beano at Sharm el-Sheikh Down, offering to pay the world climate reparations in compensation for Britain's greatest gift to the world, the Industrial Revolution. That's how nutso our governing class is. Meanwhile, while they're fretting over sea levels in the Indian Ocean in the next century, the actual territory for which these guys are responsible, this United Kingdom, is being washed away right now. The incoming migrant tide on the southern shore now surges all the way to the East Riding of Yorkshire, where 77 strapping young lads are to be housed at the Humberview Hotel. Here's Councillor Julie Abram talking to GB News reporter Anna Riley.
As a council, we got informed that it was a possibility maybe a few weeks before, but you're not allowed to say anything. And actually, we only got final confirmation 3 days before they were going to start placing asylum seekers in the hotel.
Quote from Councillor Abram, but you're not allowed to say anything. And they're apparently building a new hospital just for quote-unquote asylum seekers at the Manston facility, but you're not allowed to say anything about that either. Would you like to see a doctor? Did you sprain your wrist over-enthusiastically clapping for carers every Thursday? Toughen you. The nurses are going on strike. Councillor Abram again, just so we understand this, but you're not allowed to say anything. How much is this feckless government not telling us? Do you know where this is? Well, let's see. No women, no children, no pensioners, just thousands of young men milling about, men of apparently Middle Eastern origin, in which case it's obviously not the Middle East, because any young man with half a brain cell has skedaddled out of there and is heading for a life of free mobiles and 24-hour room service in the UK. That is, in fact, the Atrium Hotel at Heathrow Airport, as their website puts it. It's like sleeping on a cloud. I'll say, GB News telephoned the hotel to ask what's going on. Their representative stepped away from the telephone for a moment, then returned and hung up on us. A little more Googling revealed that this is a young chap from a well-to-do family in Erbil in Iraq. I was there a long time ago, Erbil. It's up in the Kurdish part of Iraq. And he's been recording his epic journey all the way to London via France. Did you hear all the nice Franco pop, the country-specific pop music he put on as he was passing through from Turkey to the French Republic? I must say, breakfast at the Atrium Hotel looks nice, but it's £14.99. That's not a problem for Mohammed, because you are picking up the tab for Mohammed. We checked with Google Maps, and the view from Mohammed's room is clearly from the Atrium Hotel, so that's where he is. So we called the Atrium back, and as they'd hung up on us when we introduced ourselves as media, we pretended to be like, you know, regular folk just trying to get a room. The receptionist said, unfortunately, they were undergoing renovations at the moment. So we said, well, how about January? Any rooms in the new year? Oh, no, the renovations will still be going on in January. This building was only put up in 2019. It advertises itself as a brand new and London's latest icon. I don't think they actually need to be doing any renovations when they were put up less than 3 years ago. And yet, oddly enough, even though the hotel claims to be closed, all its facilities are still operating, not just the receptionist, but the shuttle buses and the room service. I'm not sure about the bar, but that may be closed for reasons of cultural sensitivity. Anyway, we decided to send one of our producers to go have him go down there and take a look at what's going on.
4,000 people in there.
4,000 people in there?
Yeah.
Okay, wow, that's a lot of people.
Yeah.
Are they all Kurdish?
No, Arabic, Afghani's, Iranis.
Okay.
All countries there.
How you come to England?
England. I came in the lorry.
Lorry, okay. It's very dangerous.
It's very dangerous.
Yeah.
Just to recap, they're not all Kurdish. There's also Arabs and Iranians there. They're all men. One fella says he's been living there for 2 months. Another says there are 4,000 men there. It's a big hotel, 600 rooms, but that works out at 6 or 7 to a room. This is just one hotel, but it's a snapshot of your future. 4,000 young men in one hotel is an army. It's bigger than most of the European detachments to Iraq or Afghanistan, for example. You count all the hotels, and what it adds up to is the loss of your country. There's a reason they want you worrying about sea levels in the Maldives in the 22nd century, because this stuff they don't want you worrying about. Let me know what you think. GBViews at gbnews.uk. I should say we've had a response to this situation from Councillor Shantanu Rajawat, who's the leader of Hounslow Council, in which this hotel is located. And Councillor Rajawat says, Hounslow has a proud history of supporting refugees and asylum seekers. However, the situation we are facing now is one where vulnerable people are left languishing in hotels through direct arrangements made by the Home Office. Hounslow is home to over 3,500 asylum seekers, more than double the Home Office's own threshold for a local authority. That's an interesting point there, actually. Local authorities, according to this, are not supposed to have more than, whatever it is, 1,500 quote-unquote asylum seekers on their turf. This is placing an unprecedented strain on our services. This top-down approach from the Home Office needs to stop. The Home Office needs to utilise our expertise and local knowledge to help them navigate this difficult situation properly and cost-effectively. Former MEP Patrick O'Flynn and former Sun editor Kelvin Mackenzie are here. Kelvin, they're not telling us the truth about what's going on. I would love to know how many of these local authorities, whether they're London boroughs or leafy counties, also have more than double the supposed number of asylum seekers.
There's a series of councils around the country that are actually pursuing the government through the courts right now to say you can't just come along to us, Cambridge is one of them, and dump thousands or hundreds or even 50 onto us without us being involved in the decision making. For 2 reasons. One, for instance, Cambridge says, well, we're quite an attractive tourist spot.
Yeah.
He said, and the hotels that you have chosen to put these people in are ones which we would normally expect tourists to come in. And when the tourists do see people of a different hue wandering around doing nothing because they're not allowed to work, the migrants, correctly, right, then they're not going to feel very comfortable. So there are a lot of issues. That issue there is literally incredible. Incredible, because I haven't read about it anywhere else. So to have 4,000 people in 600 rooms in a hotel that we knew nothing about is an absolute scandal. And it was going on anywhere. In North Wales, there's a bit, no, it's not North Wales, I think it's more like Central Wales, but it's very Welsh Wales. There's a village of about 250 people, and they're going to dump about another 300 migrants onto them. And the locals have no say in any of this. Why doesn't this government, why doesn't a Labour government, because we might as well talk about them going to become in power, what is anybody doing about this? This is year in, year out. Day in, day out.
You know, we've just had the 5th anniversary of Grenfell Tower. This hotel is basically Grenfell Tower with room service.
Yeah.
I mean, you've got far more people. I mean, at some point, Patrick, doesn't all these philosophical discussion of the European Convention on Human Rights, isn't it all the reality is way beyond all that now?
I think so. I mean, I despair of Rishi Sunak's regime. He's only half-heartedly, it seems to me, supported Suella Braverman, who wants to try and grasp the nettle here. He's even made it possible for Keir Starmer to appear to be outflanking him on the patriotic right, which is some achievement. He's swanned off spending all our money at COP27. Next week, he seems to be getting Jeremy Hunt primed to tax all the money from people who work hard and give it to people who don't. But this, I really think culturally, the elite Tories don't get the affront to people all across Britain, because some of the hotels they've taken over, I know a couple of them quite well. There's the Prime Hotel opposite Stoke-on-Trent. Railway station. At Hull, there's a posh hotel at the station, the sort of place where your great aunt would have taken you for a Sunday high tea on your birthday.
Now you're
completely handed over, you know, with almost zero consultation with the local population to young men of different, cultures, destroying the civic pride of these towns and cities. And this government, this latest administration, appears as lackadaisical, as Boris Johnson was on it. And it was one of the reasons why no one from the 2019 electorate stood up for him. They left him to the Kate Gate inquisitors because he had let them down on this issue.
Well, when you say that, Jeremy Hunt is going to take money from the working population, give it to those who don't, I mean, at least in the old days, they used to be giving it to your compatriot deadbeats who were just sitting around. Now we're basically taking money from working people, giving it to this guy from Erbil who comes from a hugely wealthy family in Erbil, and we're paying him. Kelvin, you are a legend of the golden age of Fleet Street, and I don't know whether
Nicely said, though. Nicely said.
I don't know whether this was one of yours, but we all remember when Jim Callahan was at the G7 meeting in the Caribbean, and the famous headline, "Crisis, what crisis?" as he was in his bathing shorts in the West Indies. It's exactly the same now with Rishi Sunak at COP27. Why don't they get the crisis, what crisis headlines?
Do you know what? To be tough is now considered vile politics. And yet, what I suspect the voter wants is they want tough leadership. So they want it on this issue. They have never had it. This is now what? This is now 3 years, really, 3 to 4 years of it, right? So we got Just Stop Oil, just decided, right, the major commercial route of our country, every working man, everybody going on holiday, everybody going to a funeral, anybody going to a hospital, right, nothing happens there, right? The police say, well, I'm not sure. And then we have nurses going on strike. In my lifetime, the idea that they can move from angels to what they're going to, the idea that they would do nothing.
Clap for carers.
Yeah,
Where did all the carers go?
Right. So what we have now is that no politician feels they can be tough because they feel they will lose the election and they'll lose the voters. The actual reverse is true. And I wonder at what... So Rishi is going to be thrown out in exactly the same way as either Liz was going to be or Boris might... Yes, he was probably going to get slung out as well. So we don't... Why is it? What has happened to the politics of it all? They'll probably get some rather clever person come in. Oh, you don't understand this, Mark. You da-di-da-di-da-da-di-da-da. So this conversation, right, so how long have you been saying... this is quite a really good exclusive piece of television, right? So how long have you been now talking about this on your show? What, for a year, is it?
It's getting on.
Year,
it's
18
getting
months.
on for a year, and when you're getting up... And the 1,000 a night, that's on the dinghies. The one guy we were talking to, he came over in a lorry. There's others who came in. Some of them just fly in. Some of them, like the daughter of a marquis doing the Grand Tour in 1892, have their luggage village sent on ahead, which is all these desperate people. They've got no possession. They've got no possessions because their steamer trunks were flown in ahead of them doing the dinghy ride.
So on the version of that, so the Times this morning, excellent piece of reportage, kind of tucked away, I presume, because they don't want to be associated with any, very sure that, made the point that what the Albanians are doing is they're using their pins, their digital pins on their phones to show where they are, and they come in off the boats, they run like bloody fury, and then they get picked up by either vans, trucks or cars and disappear into the system. Now, I suspect that system, I'm sorry if there's a member of the Albanian embassy watching this show, I suspect that there might be some criminality associated with the system. But this is what's going on.
Totally Albanophobic, that. There's only a very small number of them are in the drugs and prostitution business. Patrick, let me ask you, because Kelvin, I thought, made a good point by comparing it to the Just Stop Oil thing. What's interesting to me is we have a woke constabulary that seems to be quite happy to hold up ambulances so people can glue themselves to the highway over climate change. And it's the same on the migrant issue, that basically Border Force and the Royal National Lifeboat Institution and other agencies are basically the business partners of these human trafficking gangs now.
Well, yes, I think since we had, I think it was Priti Patel appointed someone called a clandestine channel threat commander about 2 years ago. It's one of the stunts that was supposed to sort this out. All that's happened is we've become a much more efficient water taxi service to pick up at the halfway line, as it were, and you're coming back here. So that's actually further incentivised people coming across. And I must say, while we're giving Rishi Sunak a well-deserved kicking, another thing he did was he had this love-in with Macron, where they looked like sort of interchangeable, swanky, centrist technocrats. And then at the margins, he met the rather interesting new Prime Minister of Italy. He should be doing a deal with people like her, with the Denmark government, with the Sweden government, to rip up this obsolete regime on asylum and build something new where we take a limited number of genuine refugees from UN camps by war zones, proper numbers of women and children, and we should go the Australian route. No one who arrives illegally gets to live in our country, and that means offshore processing. I'd like to see it in a British overseas territory like Ascension Island, so we have guaranteed accommodation there, and then use the foreign aid budget to buy the failed applicants places in developing countries who will give them a break if they're ambitious. I think you have to be that hard.
But you see, we're talking about this in practice. I mean, and that's right. There's any number of... You could use Ascension, you could use Pitcairn Island. We've got all these British islands all over the map that they could be processed in. And we're thinking practically, but there's no sense, when you look these Tory ministers in the eyes, there's no sense that they're actually going to act on this thing.
Well, what's it? Yes. OK, so what the interesting point would be here would be if that Tory minister were there, they would never want to drill down into what the issue is and where the point is that they will not go any further, where they fear a massive kind of explosion of violence or explosion in the electorate or somewhere. They won't say, we will not do that because of this. And what I want to do, I want somebody to tell me, why can't we push them back? What is going to stop this happening? Why can't we have poor relations with France so we can't go to France for our holiday? Big deal. So what? I mean, it's not the end of the world. There are other countries to go to. So there may be an issue which is impossible to solve, but let them tell us what it is. Nobody will ever say, we will go this far, we're not going to do that. And why then don't we have a reasonable party, and I'm not talking about some bloody lunatic far-right nonsense, a reasonable party that actually says, we will do this. And why is it that that there isn't even within the Conservative Party a groupage which says this is unacceptable, we believe we should act. Who says that? I mean, Patrick, you're much more connected with politics than I am.
I think Suella Braverman says that and is looking for the support. I think Priti Patel...
has she got it?
Well, Priti Patel wanted to do it, but she never confronted Boris, and Boris would never back her up. Now, I think Suella is more of a political killer, and I think she's got the support of the Red Wall Tory MPs, quite a lot of the kind of old Redwood, Edward Lee right wing of the party,
right.
And I think she's digging her heels in, and she will push Rishi Sunak, this is my great hope, a lot harder than Priti Patel ever felt able to push Boris Johnson.
Are you sure about it? Because in the end, someone has to do something that would get them back to what Theresa May used to call the nasty party. In other words, they're going to have to be cold and unfair. What I find odd about this, Kelvin, is that the radar knows who's on the beach at France and when they're getting into the boats. If they wanted to, they could have whatever's left of the Royal Navy parked on the fringe of British waters, stopping them. And the wake caused by warships would make a lot of those dinghies very unsafe. What's interesting, we have that capability because we'd like to know whether someone on France is putting together a dirty nuke to take over. But right now, we do so little that I'm not even convinced. I'm convinced you could actually smuggle a dirty nuke in on one of those dinghies, because it'd only have to get 200 yards off the French beach, and the RNLI will take it the rest of the way.
Okay, but let me ask you a question then. Where is the line? Because is the line we're going to push them back, and in pushing them back, wallop, a boat turns over, and we'll say 20 drown, right? That, in this current climate, what would happen with 20 migrants drowning when it was organised by a democratically elected government? How would...
Well, the Tories would lose their nerve in the face of the Liberal media outcry. I don't think pushbacks is the answer. It's the busiest shipping lane in the world. Like what the Australians had was a huge expanse of water which was in no control of any nation, international waters they could push boats into. We're, right up against the line with France. So this idea of pushing back boats into French territorial waters, landing them against France's will on its own frontier, I don't think that is reasonable personally, which is why I think we need to grasp the issue as a country ourselves, and we have these overseas territories, and we must bail out of the ECHR and run our own system.
Just on that point, bailing out of the ECHR, in law, I don't understand who some Azerbaijani judge on the ECHR is to distinguish between the mainland United Kingdom and, say, Ascension Island. They're both British sovereign territory. If somebody washes up on the south shore, why should an Azerbaijani judge say, well, he can't be shipped to Pitcairn or wherever?
That is true. That is true. But remember, we are having a discussion here which is probably, I would say, unique on television. Right? Not only today, but probably in the last 20 years. We're discussing a major issue which upsets a lot of people and is causing a big financial hole in our country. OK, so we want to get out of this court, right? It doesn't work for us. We want to get out for it. What happens within Parliament? This is what I can't understand. The will of the people is constantly denied by the very people who are supposed to be representing us. So is there a disconnect now? And this disconnect last time in the United States in 2016, that disconnect led to Trump being...
no, because it wouldn't work this way, because if Trump would be gone under this system, Trump would be gone quicker than Liz Truss. That's what
that is true.
Thank you very much, Kelvin. Thank you, Patrick. We're getting your thoughts in just a moment. GB Views at GBnews.uk, and we will talk to my favourite Australian, Alexandra Marshall, and my, 7th, 12th favourite... 17th favourite Welshman, Jamie Jenkins. Who exactly benefits from the climate obsession? Another story you're not meant to talk about, excess deaths. Lots of them. Stick with GB News. We're coming right back.
We are GB News, and we'd like to say thank you to each and every one of you for bringing us your conversations. for helping our great nation find its voice. We are here for you on radio, television, and online. Across England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland.
It's not the BBC, you actually get your facts right.
We are proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
My name's Tom Harwood, and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
Every Friday and Sunday night from 9, it's Mark Dolan Tonight.
We're on the same page again. There's something weird happening.
Let Ian finish. Don't be such a cranky.
That mini budget was the tip of the iceberg.
And on Saturday, my show just got bigger. From 8, it's Mark Dolan's Saturday Night In.
You can't govern a country if you can't speak. Stop talking.
My God, we reached the end. I've never been early in my life. Only on GB News, the People's Channel.
Join me, Arlene Foster, for The Briefing on GB News. Every Friday at 3 p.m, I'll give you all the latest political news and analysis, and we'll have robust live debate. To make sure that you're caught up on all of the biggest issues of the day, we'll bring on experts in their field. I'll ask the questions that you'd like to ask. We're not afraid to tackle discussions from all perspectives, including yours. Don't forget, The Briefing with me, Arlene Foster, every Friday at 3 p.m. on GB News.
We are GB News, right across the nation. You can get us on television, on radio, on digital. We're absolutely everywhere.
Amazing! You see, amazing!
You remind me of me in the European Parliament. But here's the most important bit. We are not part of the mainstream establishment. We think and speak just like you do. We are the People's Channel.
Magnificent. That's really, really thoughtful.
Come and join us on GB News, the People's News Channel.
GB News is the People's Channel, so if we don't hear from the people, we're not doing it right. We wanted to know what you made of this situation. Diane says, how can there be 6 to 7 men per room in the Atrium Hotel in Heathrow? That most definitely breaks the fire safety regulations and insurance policies. You're missing the point here, Diane. Our society is bifurcating. So you are I take it, a lawful resident of the United Kingdom. So all the micro-regulation of every aspect of your existence applies to you. But if you belong to the other demographic, the people who just come in by lorry, by dinghy, by aeroplane, none of those regulations apply to any of them. They're overlaid like they do it now with the different telephonic area codes in America and that kind of thing. They inhabit the same geographical space, but they're entirely separate. Matthew says, seeing as it's taxpayers' money that is paying for them, then yes, we should have the right to know what hotels are being used. Lynn says, last week got a call the morning I was due to check into the hotel to say that the hotel was closed to the public with immediate effect. Checked when I arrived home and the hotel had been taken over for asylum seeker use. Yeah, they're not going to be any hotels. They're going to be at Claridge's. They're going to be at the Dorchester. There won't be any hotels left. And Defence Policy Research, which is an unusual name, says is someone in government gagging local and county councillors across the country from speaking up on this issue. Yeah, they're told, that councillor was quite right. They're told you're not allowed to talk about this. That's the Home Office advice to the elected representatives on county councils, district councils, whatever, up and down the land, and it's appalling. If we're going to do more on this, it's disgusting, the silence. Oh, the sea levels in the Maldives in the 22nd century. That's the real pressing matter. There's a reason why they're wasting your time with that rubbish. By the way, if Rishi Rich really signs on to those climate reparations, broke Britain will be paying money to the new empire, the one that supplanted us, China. No idea what they'll use it for. Maybe to improve security protocols at the Wuhan Institute of Bioweapons. Maybe to buy up a couple more Commonwealth islands. They're collecting the set. But it does make you wonder who benefits from climate hysteria. Do you know Nicolas Maduro? He's the strongman of Venezuela. The United States doesn't recognize him as president of that country. In fact, the US Department of Justice announced a $15 million bounty for information leading to his capture. Look at this. Now, 15 mil is not to be sneezed at, so at Sharm el-Sheikh today, Joe Biden's special envoy, John Kerry, could have taken Maduro down, knocked him unconscious, there they are, could have dragged him into the wings and collected that 15 million all for himself. But because Mr. Maduro agrees with John Kerry on the imminent climate apocalypse, they instead did the old big climate buddy routine. What's going on here? Alexandra Marshall edits the Aussie end of The Spectator and joins us now. For the young folks, Alexandra, the whole climate apocalypse thing may be something to do with ideological purity and utopianism, but there's a lot of hard-headed power politics going on, particularly where China's concerned.
Well, first of all, I'm pleased to find out that I'm your favourite Australian because I can hear your little introductions beforehand, so that's good to know. But for the young people, a lot of it's just a competition for attention. It's like what they do on TikTok. If they're virtuous, then they get credit at school and all sorts of things. So we can ignore the kids. It's a mixture of brainwashing and attention seeking. But as far as the real politics goes, gee, I'm glad that COP has finally thrown off any delusions it had of just being a virtue signalling conference, and now we can see that it is basically an extortion racket for the third world. So we've got our climate minister over there right now, and the whole thing is to pay the Pacific Islands who might have built their nations on sinking coral atolls, which is of course no one's fault but their own, and they want us to pay hundreds of millions of dollars to them. Now, my question to our Prime Minister, which no other journalist will ask anybody in power, is why are the Pacific Islands, if they are so angry about so-called climate change and the water's rising, why do they do deals with China to sell and mine their fossil fuels and renewables assets? Could it perhaps have anything to do with selling that back to the West for a profit and then upping the value of their mining resources, which Australia then buys? I mean, this is really just a money-making thing.
Yeah, no, and it certainly is for China. I mean, all China's going to do with any money it gets from climate reparations is make the Yangtze River an even more disgusting and weird color. I mean, this is what's crazy about this climate reparations business, Alexandra. I mean, do you really think that Western self-flagellation can be taken to apologizing for the Industrial Revolution and paying money for having gotten there first?
Well, do you remember how in COVID we had this whole COVID safe marketing campaign where companies were saying, buy from us because we're COVID safe? Well, they've got the same thing going on with climate, where you've got companies like Ben & Jerry's circling around the edge of this climate hysteria. I don't know if you've seen their Twitter account right now, but they've got this whole, Islands thing, holding a big sign saying the seas are rising and so are we, and you have to give money to the Pacific Islands, but also buy ice cream from us while you're doing that, is basically their message.
Yeah.
So that's what we've got happening around the corporate thing, and China's sitting there basically using all this climate money to build military bases on the edge of Australia and mining all the Pacific Islands while they're at it and enslaving the governments there. And it is just it's the most idiotic thing, and our idiotic paternalism. We think, oh yes, those poor Pacific Islands. Meanwhile, they're scamming us blind. I mean, we must be the stupidest people ever to live.
No, that's complete. And Ben & Jerry's, I don't even get it, because they make their ice cream, which I've never really liked. It's got too many chunks in it. But Ben & Jerry's make their lousy ice cream from Vermont cows, who are some of the most flatulent emission-producing creatures on the planet. So I can't even stand them. Nobody takes it. They don't take the climate apocalypse seriously when it comes to the bovine flatulence of their company. Nobody does except governments when it comes to things like giving $1 trillion in reparations.
No, look, Ben & Jerry's have tried racism. Now they're on to climate change. And I believe they're serious when they switch out their cow milk for something like, I don't know, crushed crickets or something. Then maybe we can go, yeah, you might be serious about that. But for everybody else, our governments and prime ministers are giving away billions of dollars while we are in a financial crisis. It is such an insult to the hardworking people of everybody's countries to just watch their money walking out the door in this criminal scandal.
Yeah. No, that's absolutely right. And the craziness, it's only whatever it is, the fourth day of COP, and it's getting nuttier by the day. Thank you very much, Alexandra. We're going to check in and see if it's even crazier next time we talk, which it undoubtedly will be. Stump the Steyn looms. You can ask me anything, gbviews@gbnews.uk. And our stats man, Jamie Jenkins, is here to help us run the numbers. Don't touch that dial. We're coming right back.
Hello there, it's Eamon Holmes here from Breakfast on GB News. We're not just on your television and your screens, you know.
We're on DAB plus digital radio, so you can listen to your favourite shows on the move.
If you've not yet listened to GB News Radio, it's very simple. We're on your radio player and TuneIn apps, on your smart speaker, phone or tablet, or online at gbnews.uk.
Take us with you wherever you go. GB News Radio.
You never have to miss a moment of the People's Channel.
Hello, I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m, where I'll be joined by two of the country's top comedians as we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight. If it's a big story, we'll be covering it, I guarantee, but we'll also have some fun along the way. That's GB News Headliners at 11 p.m. We won't put you to sleep, unlike some of the other paper review shows out there. So join us, 11 p.m, 7 nights a week.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
Monday to Thursday on GB News, it's Bev Turner Today from 10 a.m. There's never been a more interesting but also critical time in British politics, and I can't wait to bring you the biggest stories of the day with the best factual accuracy and also a few of my own opinions thrown in. We'll engage in passionate but always polite debate with your thoughts and opinions at the centre of it all. Monday to Thursday, 10 till 12 on TV, on radio and online.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
The national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Deebs & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Mark Steyn. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
On the Mark Steyn Show, we cover the stories a lot of people are scared even to mention. The stuff that really matters with some of the world's biggest thinkers.
Now is his opportunity to kind of take the steering wheel of history.
Break away from the flop at 8 o'clock on GB News with the Mark Steyn Show.
We are GB News.
And we'd like to say thank you
To each and every one of you.
For helping our great nation
Find its voice.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Across England,
Scotland,
Wales and Northern Ireland.
On TV.
On radio.
And online.
We're proud to be
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
It doesn't get any more basic than dead bodies. Huge numbers of extra corpses, far more than you'd normally expect. We've talked about excess mortality regularly since it took off during the spring and summer. Dead children across Europe, dead young and middle-aged adults across America. Cause unknown is now the leading cause of death in the Canadian province of Alberta. And this isn't a small uptick in the Netherlands. Just last month, 16% more dead people. And as the rest of the West goes, so goes the United Kingdom. Headline from The Telegraph. Crisis as excess deaths soar to levels higher than during COVID pandemic. The insurance agents talk about it, the undertakers talk about it, but the government is too busy offering to pay climate reparations to Peking, so they don't talk about it. What's going on? Jamie Jenkins is the former head honcho of health numbers at the Office for National Statistics. Jamie, are we any closer to know what's actually causing all these extra deaths?
Yeah, good evening, Mark. And I think it's good that you're actually talking about it, because obviously a lot of the media aren't talking about it, even when we had practically every single day how many deaths within 28 days of a COVID test rammed on our throat by the kind of the mainstream media. Now, I've looked at the figures. So what we've got, Mark, is about 13,500 extra deaths now over the last 25 weeks. So we're pretty much bang on half a year now, and we're seeing these excess deaths. So when I talk to you, probably every single month, we probably bring this topic up. It's becoming like buses. It's regular now. We are seeing this thing. It's a bit of a scandal, really. Now, what we've seen over the course of the summer and partly through the autumn as well is some mini waves of COVID, and that's kind of contributing to some of the older people. So we can strip out COVID. We do know that COVID obviously disproportionately kills the older people. So we can take all of those deaths out, and we're left with a concerning group of people who are around the ages of 30 to 59, where we are still seeing deaths above what you would expect, even when you strip out all of the aging effects in the population, all of the COVID that's been going on. Take that out. Now, I've been looking at the NHS figures a bit in terms of this now. And what's interesting, Mark, is there's no more people attending A&E than what we saw before the pandemic. And there's no more people being admitted to A&E for emergency reasons than before the pandemic. And then you start looking at the waiting lists, and that starts giving you a bit of an interesting picture there, because before the pandemic, people who were waiting for a heart procedure, it was never zero, but it was close to zero. But now we're seeing around 5,000 patients waiting for a heart procedure. And if more and more people are dying of heart issues, which is what we're seeing, and we're not seeing more of them turning up at A&E or being admitted, my concern, Mark, is how many people are perhaps dying with not getting any treatment whatsoever because the NHS closed down because of the COVID pandemic.
I get that, and I think that's certainly part of it. But, you know, there are countries in Europe and North America, Australia, with still functioning health services, and they've also had this phenomenon. We should emphasize a point you brought up back when we first started discussing this, which is that normally after a pandemic, say a century ago, after the Spanish flu, mortality generally goes down because people who might have died in 1923 instead died in 1920 when the Spanish flu hit. So in a normal scenario, we would expect to have lower excess mortality now. Why are government institutions so uninterested in what's killing the population?
Well, this is what's puzzling, because you've been kind of talking to me for several months on this, Mark, and I also spoke to your colleague Dan Wootton about this. I think his producers got in touch with the Department of Health and said they were instigating an investigation. Well, this is happening every single week, and I've heard absolutely nothing from the Department of Health on this, as if like Steve Barclay is not even looking at it. This is the type of thing that there should be an investigation. Now, there could be a multitude of different reasons, but even if it was a case that the NHS isn't treating people or getting to see people, we do know that even if you do get to the hospital now, Mark, we talk about perhaps people who are dying not even getting there. If you do get there, the chances of seeing somebody is pretty slim in terms of getting a timely investigation of yourself. And even then, if you're seen by somebody to get admitted to the hospital, those delays have shot up. So there could be a range of different factors. But the fact that we're not seeing anybody whatsoever coming out from government. And look at today, we've got the NHS talking about going on strike with the nurses. They may talk about only striking for non-critical care reasons, but it looks like cancelling all operations and elective surgery could be leading to some of these excess deaths that we're seeing across the country.
Yeah, and actually we should mention that that's the Royal College of Nursing. That's actually quite dramatic. We know that Scotland and Northern Ireland are all in on it, and various other parts of the country too. You know, you and I have a slightly different view on how much vaccine injuries and vaccine deaths are part of this. But there must be ultimately a political reason why the Department of Health has nothing to say about this. And my concern, regardless of how many people you think are dead of the Pfizer and the AstraZeneca or whatnot, is that out of some political calculation, the Department of Health is figuring it's not in its interest to even recognize that excess deaths are an issue here.
Well, I think it's a very valid argument there, Mark. I think obviously I'm, as a statistician, look for all of the evidence in terms of what we've got. Now, if the Department of Health came out and said that we've looked at everything and there's no link at all to anything to do with vaccinations, they can come out and do that. But they're pretty silent, so they're not ruling anything in. They're not ruling anything out because they're not ruling anything. They're not talking about nothing at all. We do know there's probably an elevated chance of getting some of these issues when you've had a COVID infection as well. We know loads of people have had kind of COVID infections, but I think the silence is the big concerning thing on this, because like you say, every single day for nearly 2 years, we were told how many people were dying within 28 days of a COVID test. Yeah. The only thing that took that off the media was the Ukraine war. If the Ukraine war never started, we might be seeing those numbers continue today, Mark. So I think, the government needs to act. We do know there's an issue here. You can't shy away from it. I can guarantee, Mark, we're going to be in about a month's time, coming up to Christmas, we'll have another 4 weeks worth of data, and we'll probably be talking about exactly the same thing. So my challenge to government is, you've got 4 weeks, let's get an answer before Christmas.
Yeah, that's great. We're going to hold them to that. We'll keep asking whoever's this week's health secretary to come on and talk about this. But yeah, you got till Christmas. We've had excess deaths now consistently since the late spring. Let us get some answers on it. Thank you very much, Jamie Jenkins. It's always a pleasure. Let's stump it out. Dev says, is the UK a serious country? Is it overrated on the global stage? Is it becoming ungovernable? Protesters do what they please, block motorways, cause accidents, but permitted by law. No control on immigration. Law permits, and they preach the world ignorant, and the innocent listen to them. Look at that building behind me. That's the Palace of Westminster. This country is a great country. It governed a quarter of the world from those buildings on the other side of the river. And that is unique in history. So it's exiting the stage as a laughingstock. Dan Wootton's here to give it some Wednesday welly. What you got, Dan?
The three of you earlier. Calvin McKenzie, he cancelled on me tomorrow night, Mark, so I know who his favourite is now. That's all I'm going to say. But we are continuing the theme with Lee Anderson and Rod Liddell, who says, look, Albania is a holiday destination. These people should not be allowed to step foot in the UK. So that is going to be a fascinating conversation coming up.
If it's any consolation to you, Dan, Lee Anderson gave me the bums rush yesterday, so you're his favourite.
That's my
It
revenge.
all evens out. That's the best late night show on telly. Coming up with Dan Wootton after the weather. Stay safe, stay free.
We are GB News.
And we'd like to say thank you
To each and every one of you.
For helping our great nation.
Find its voice.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Across England,
Scotland,
Wales and Northern Ireland.
On TV.
On radio.
and online.
We're proud to be
The People's Channel.
Britain's
News channel.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
Join my show Farrar, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh my goodness me.
And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farrar.
On the Mark Steyn Show, we cover the stories a lot of people are scared even to mention. The stuff that really matters with some of the world's biggest thinkers.
Now is his opportunity to kind of take the steering wheel of history.
Break away from the flop at 8 o'clock on GB News with the Mark Steyn Show.
Hello, I'm Esther McVeigh.
And I'm Philip Davis.
Whether you're watching or listening on TV, online or on radio, we handpick the latest stories, debates and expert opinions for your weekend. So whether that's politics, news or showbiz, we've got it covered.
Join us every Saturday morning at 10 o'clock on GB News.
Hello, I'm Alastair Stewart, and I'd invite you to join me at noon on Saturdays and Sundays for Alastair Stewart and Friends. I've been in this business for over 40 years. Now, here at GB News, I've never been happier. I get to choose the big stories that really interest me. We hear what you have to say, and you hear what I have to say. I really hope you can join me, noon on Saturdays and Sundays.
I'm Mark Dolan. Join me at 11 on GB News for Headliners, in which I'll be joined by two of the UK's top comedians discussing tomorrow's papers. If it's an important story, we'll cover it, but we'll have some fun along the way. Headliners, the late night paper review that won't send you to sleep like the others will. 7 nights a week at 11 p.m. on GB News.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because